Hi, I'm Francina,
I'm Jackie.
and welcome to the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast.
This podcast is an inquiry into whether rest and love and justice can produce transformative social change. The dominant narrative is this overwork and this glorification of it, especially in the justice space. And here, we're going to question that notion.
Come sit with us as we meet our collective humanity and share stories around rest, love, and justice. It is our hope to create a shift that enables us to recognize that racial justice work is a human issue. It affects us all. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second season of the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast. We are so happy to be here. I am one of your hosts, Francina Call.
And I'm Jackie Gao. Nice to be back with everyone.
Yes, and we are so happy to be back in this season with a very special guest, Denise Hamilton. I remember listening to a podcast she was on by Debbie Brown, and I remember I usually listen to podcasts and I like piddle around the house. I had to sit down and listen to everything she was saying, and immediately went and got her book and was like, oh my gosh, we need to have her on our podcast, and she needs to be part of our world because her brilliance was and is next level. So we are so honored to have Denise Hamilton with us on the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast, and I'm going to let my co-host do her introduction.
Thanks, Denise, for being here. I do remember that day, actually. Francina's like, I heard this woman speak on this podcast, and like, we need to talk to her. And she shared the Indivisible book with me as well. So thank you. This is definitely a dream come true for both Francina and I. Thanks, Denise, for being here. Really appreciate it. And I would love to give you a formal introduction, your bio. And yeah, as we talked about, me and Denise is an author of this amazing book, Indivisible. She's a speaker and a consultant, and she's dedicated to helping leaders foster authentic connections in this world that's always changing. She is great at navigating challenges of remote work, AI, and then just diverse workforces, how to help leaders do all those things. And she is a champion for the people and the side of change that involves supporting humans and people. She's a believer in our collective potential to create solutions, and rather than dwell on problems, Denise brings a uniquely optimistic and practical approach to even the most difficult conversations. And she has a great ability to inspire trust and guidance with others. Her insight builds strong and connected workplaces, and her wisdom has been shared in MIT Sloan Management Review, NPR, Harvard Business School, Bloomberg, MSNBC's Morning Joe, and Newsweek. And as we shared before, her book Indivisible explores how shared purpose and collaboration can help bridge divides. So thank you, Denise, for being here. Thank you for sharing your time with us today, and curious if there's anything else you want to add.
I'm so glad to be with you today. You are two of my favorite people. And, I love people with purpose. And that's how I strive to navigate my reality and to, manifest my time sitting on this big rock that we all share. I love when people read my bio because it's very like awkward and uncomfortable. And, I feel like this really fancy lady. But the truth of it is, I just like people and I care about them. And I want us to figure out how to live together and to thrive together. Like just living isn't enough. You got to figure out how to thrive.
Yes. Yes. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And we're going to just jump right in and start with our first question, which is, what is your story around rest? And we love this question here because I really believe that a lot of people talk at each other about different, components and things that are important in the world. But when we tell our stories about certain topics, people are able to access their own story in a deeper way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we invite you to share your story around rest, however it shows up for you.
Well, it's a complicated story, and it's a story that has definitely changed over time. When you grow up low income, I think there is a kind of immediate understanding of rest as sleep, rest as not working, having quiet time, having privacy, right? Because that's a dimension of rest we don't talk about a lot. When you're in a small place and you have your brothers and everybody's around and whatever, it's hard to even carve out like just a place just to have quiet and peace. And so the idea of rest that I kind of started life with was very much sleeping late. Like that's rest, you know? And then I think as I got older and got exposed to different people from different backgrounds and different socioeconomic groups and different origin stories of themselves, this idea of rest being vacation, that evolution, right? From, it isn't just having a quiet place in your house. Like rest is being able to get on a plane and go someplace and take, oh my gosh, a week, 2 weeks. You couldn't even imagine that. It was like a long weekend is rest, right? And I think at my big age, as I live, what is this, my 54th year around the sun, I think that it has evolved into choice. Rest for me is choice, is about having options. It's about being able to create space. It's about being able to even create harmony in your own physical home, right? Of the ability to set boundaries. It's the ability to um, self manage. Because I think the world is always going to be worlding, but do you have the discipline to kind of cut all that out and create a place for yourself to rejuvenate? And I don't know, we have to have this conversation again when I'm in my 70s to see what it evolves into, because I think there's another evolution coming for sure. But I think this idea of having the ability to create and for it not to be special. Rest isn't special. Rest isn't extra. It isn't something that if you're really lucky or you work really hard, you get to have. It's not a prize, right? That shift is probably the biggest change in story that I've experienced over the course of my life. It's like quite a journey, quite a
Yes.
journey.
And I love that you're pointing to something that's really important for our viewers to listen to here, that it's a progression, right? That it's been a journey. And I think that so many people, our listeners as well, myself included, get stuck in the narrative of what rest was for us when we were a certain age. And then we just hold on to that. And then we just try to get more sleep all the time. And we miss that, oh, wait, this is a journey. And we can redefine what rest means for ourselves as we get older, as we change and transition out of different circumstances. As you become an empty nester, rest changes as well, right? Like there's so many arcs of where rest can go. And so I just want to invite people listening to this right now to even just start inquiring a little deeper. Has your idea of what rest is and your access to it evolved even
Mhm.
a little bit over the arc of your life? And maybe this is a good time to start thinking about that. Have I only been looking at rest in one dimension, right? And so thank you for bringing that forward for us.
Oh yeah. I mean, rest is not privilege. It's
Right.
taken me a long time to decouple rest from privilege. I mean, I think of my mother waking us up on Saturday mornings because we had to clean the house and just desperate for like 2 more hours of sleep or hour and a half of sleep. Like that was very simple. Like the privilege of, boy, I wish somebody else was here to clean the house and then I could rest. And it's like I see in my adult life that I've brought that concept through, right? That if I had more, then I could rest. And it's like, what a twisted, weird way to think about that. Like, it doesn't matter how much you have. You have to cultivate and figure out how to braid and infuse rest in your life. Rest is like food. It's like sunshine, and you have to see it that way. And if you don't, then you'll make a lot of excuses and reasons why you don't have to have it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had our friend Aaron Johnson that came on the podcast. He was like, rest is expensive, and how he had to shift that mentality. Or people, our friend Ed King also said, like, I'm going to steal that quiet moment. Like, what are the
Mhm.
ways in which we even describing and talking about rest? And I do appreciate you sharing just the evolution of it. And I was booking in 20 years time when we interview you in your 70s. So I'm
Yes,
excited about that.
yes, yes.
Um, and like our next question is, I mean, we're the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast, and we're really interested in how those three themes like are intertwined and really kind of a trifecta for us as we think about making change in the world. So, would love to know your story around love, love for self, for community, and even if it's a story that helps share that as well.
Yeah. This is a complicated season for that question because I think I'm getting a really new set of messages about what love looks like, you know? I think I've been very socialized around the notion that love is sacrificial, love is standing up, love is advocacy, love is being in the fight, right? It's about defending, it's about advocating in a profound, intense way. And I think it's really interesting to kind of think about the notion, like if your love doesn't include yourself, is it love? Like if you don't have the capacity for self-care and you're perpetually like pouring out and not refueling and not rejuvenating, reviving yourself, like is that love or is it martyrdom? Is it a nobility that you have bought into? And I'd be lying if I acted like I had it all figured out. I don't. This idea of I think in my life, I can, here's my first confession of the day. I think sometimes I love people out of their lesson. I love people in such a way that I put myself between them and the natural consequences of their behavior so that, to shield them, but not understanding that shielding them is cheating them out of lessons that they are supposed to be experiencing. So, you're talking to a 40, 50-year-old person and they're really only 20 because they haven't really gotten the fullness of life because there's always somebody like me in the way saying, no, 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 let's stop, let's help. And it's like, what does it mean to help? Like for me, love is help, right? That is what that means. Those are inextricably linked in my brain. And in this season of life, I'm really learning to evaluate that and to really think about that, right? To think about um, what I want for the people around me, the people in my life, and to not center kind of my decisions, my choices, my beliefs about what they should do and how things should go and how things are supposed to happen. And so in this season, if you asked me this question, 10, 15 years ago, it would be a very different answer. Um, I think what I'm learning is love is letting people have freedom, is letting them choose, letting them have their agency. Love is allowing people to disagree. It's allowing people to um, it's inviting people into my ideas and my concepts and my thoughts about things, but also allowing them to have full autonomy to make the choices for their lives. So this has been interesting in family. This has been interesting in my work. This has been interesting in my neighborhood. I have a neighbor who, obviously I'm Black and my neighbor is white, and he has never spoken to me. Never. I'll say good morning and he will just avoid me. My husband is white. He speaks to my husband every time he sees him. How you doing, sir? Hey, how you doing? And it used to really bother me. I wanted to compel him. I promise you I'm a wonderful person. If you would talk to me, you would know. Please say hi to me. And I've really evolved on that. I really kind of said, you know what? He's not interested in me. He's not, and he's missing out, but he's free to make that choice. And that is a really That's a weird way. It's new. It's weird to me. This idea of persuasion and compulsion. Nobody is compelled to love you, right? So, like my answer about rest, I think love is about choice too. I'm not required. There's nobody on earth I'm required to love. And nobody's required to love me. So how beautiful is it when somebody does choose to love you? And like what an honor, what a gift, right? So the agency in recent years has been brought really to the top of this question for me. Love is choice.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, it's still pointing towards that evolution, of what we experienced, what love was when we were younger and what we defined that as, and then getting to where you are now and being able to say, hey, it's a choice. It's a choice. And I just want to name too for our listeners that for some people listening to this right now, you only know how to access and feel love in your body because of what love was given to you as. And so, for some people who, as young children, were required to be the action of love to bring harmony in the home, love feels like you have to be the action, right? You have to go and serve and do and strive. And, it's okay for you to be on that journey. And I think that the beginning of transformation, the beginning of evolution is recognizing where you're beginning. Where is this? The story of love for you, and that it can be freedom, it can be liberation to not need to be loved by all people, to give people the liberty to choose to love you, and to give myself the liberty to choose to be okay not being loved by everybody, right? And I'm sharing even from my own story, like as a young child, I needed to feel wanted. I needed to feel loved because there wasn't a lot of that being given to me. So I strived a lot. And as I've gotten older, I'm in a new season of my life where I've done the healing work to recognize that I can give myself love, and actually the love I have for myself is enough, and it will attract the love that I need in my life, right? So I just wanted to bring that point forward for people to recognize that, you can be anywhere on that trajectory of love, right? And beginning with the story, and that's why we asked the question, your story around love, right? And for you, it's an evolution. It's getting to that point where you realize that I can still be kind and gracious to this neighbor that will never wave at me, but that does not take away your ability to embody love for people, right? He doesn't get to decide that you're not you're not a loving person. You are still projecting that out into the world. It says more about him, right? And I think it's important for people listening to this to remember that some of us are pouring ourselves out, giving out so much love that isn't coming back to us, right? And we need to stop and recognize, hey, is this a place where I need to continue to pour this love out? And if it is, Godspeed. Continue to be the shining light, to continue to be that love light. And if you need something different, you can go to a different place to get that.
Nina Simone has an incredible quote. You have to learn, you have to have the courage to get up from a table where love is no longer being served, right? And this idea of choice, right? That just a simple idea that everyone is not interested in being in a loving relationship with you, and that you have the responsibility to interpret their behaviors, their actions, their words, all of it, to decide if you need to be in that relationship. That's very new for me. I think as a people pleaser, as a middle daughter, the only daughter in the family, it's solve problems, make things happen, make sure everyone's happy. Somebody is allergic, make sure you make something special for them at dinner. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's very much like cater, serve, help. But I think I'm, especially as I get older, I'm more aware of the example that sets. Right? I don't want my daughter, who is 31, I don't want my daughter to be in relationships where she is not deeply loved. So I'm very aware of the example that I set of what I settle for and what I put up with and what I tolerate. Like I I want to teach people around me. I want my life to be an example that being in a loving relationship with me is an honor. It's a privilege. It's a gift. It's wonderful. Right. And I'm willing and open and wanting to do that. But everyone doesn't deserve that. And everyone's behavior does not merit that. And that boundary has been hard earned in my life. And it's still hard for me to this day, to be really honest. Right. So this idea of um requiring reciprocity, right? Is such it's a powerful notion that I can't say I was really taught. I had to Life has really gotten me to this point of, hmm, there is love isn't about a title. You don't get a particular relationship with me because you have a biological title or you have a particular position in my life. Like, that's not how you get it. You get it because you love me and you pour into me and I pour into you, and we have this reciprocal relationship. And there are people who will never be able to pour into me, but I can show love to them as my choice. But how people interact with me and create harm um, is important in the way I model the behavior that I want for other people that watch me and see me and observe me. So it's really become more and more important to me in recent years.
Mm, thank you so much for sharing. So many important um, nuggets of wisdom there, and yeah, thank you for that. So we're going to move into the last component of the first segment of our podcast, which is, what is your story around justice? And, it can be anywhere from your own life experiences that activated components of, like, wow, there is some injustice in these streets, to, even the impetus for what made you write this book.
Mm.
Yeah, just feel free to share whatever feels like it needs to come through.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is probably the most important thing in my entire life, the skill or the gift. If I feel like it's really important that people name their gifts, that they're unapologetically name them. Like, you should be able to write them down on a piece of paper. And you have to push through a lot of humility training to do that. But I really feel like it's important, because if you don't know what your gifts are, it's very, very hard for you to maximize them for the benefit of humanity. Right. And one of my gifts from a very young age has been reframing, challenging the existing frame that has been dished up to me. I've always been able to say, is that true? Are we sure that's accurate? Like, I'm not sure I agree with that. Like, where's your evidence for it? Like, just to challenge the frame. And it got me in trouble a lot when I was a kid, because people would think I was challenging them. And I'm not challenging you. I'm challenging the idea, the framework that you are presenting to me. And so I have to go, like, really, really far back. Like, what is my story of justice? Is I grew up in a very low income neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, and went to the neighborhood schools. They were pretty crappy, but was able to test into Stuyvesant High School, which was at the time like the number one public high school in the country, right? And when I got there, I got kind of my first mega dose of injustice. This idea that I had passed the test, so I know I'm smart enough to be here. But everyone around me seemed like they had tutors and they had gone to camp, and one person told me, oh yeah, we requested the textbooks and we read them over the summer. I felt so outstripped and so outpaced. And really, it was the first time probably in my whole life that I felt inadequate. That wasn't really a part of my story, right? But when I got there, I felt like I'm not going to be able to compete with these people. And then I would talk to people and we'd be in conversation, and I'm like, I'm just as smart as you. We're all having the same conversation. We're all doing the same thing. And it got me really looking at the preparation piece and the idea that um, in a way, it didn't matter how smart I was, because if one group is given an extraordinary amount of tools, and you're coming to the party with a subset, a tiny subset of those tools, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to compete. And so I think what's really important about that example specifically is it may not be malicious, right? Which I think is really important. I think we really ascribe a lot of malice to in the concept of injustice. And I think it's not really malice as much as it is ease, comfort, right? The enemy of justice is comfort, is peace, is an unwillingness to rock the boat or to challenge the norms or to consider, how are we structuring this and how is this working, and people wanting to start the story. I talk a lot about the importance of punctuation, where you put the commas and the periods and the question marks, like where you start the story. If you start the story at the point that I enter this environment, I'll never win. But if you start the story at, wait a minute, what are all the forces that have created this construct? Now we have a chance to create change that optimizes that space so nobody else comes into this space and feels inadequate. That's what justice looks like. And the opposite of justice is ease and comfort. And we love our ease and our comfort, right? And so we were talking about this. I was talking about this with a group of friends the other day, of just this notion of how hard it is to stand up and to challenge the status quo. Because you'll always have tons of people to tell you, don't rock the boat and you're making too big of a deal. And you guys complain about everything, or it's so easy because the social controls will always pull you back when you try to challenge the norm. But the biggest mistake that we make, and the biggest threat to justice that there is in making the mistake of thinking the way things are today is the way they have to be. They just don't have to be this way. It doesn't. We are in charge. We are choosing every single day how things are, and nothing has to be this way. And that's why travel is so important, because you go to another country and you see, are these no Japanese children on a train by themselves? What? Your brain is like, I thought it had to be like this. Are these Danish people really putting these baby strollers outside of the restaurant and eating inside? You can't believe it. But the truth of it is, none of this is permanent. All of it is subject to change. So me, justice is letting the story change. Letting the story change.
Damn. I mean, I already said it. She's brilliant. And again, gobsmacked, because even just the notion of that justice, the enemy of justice is comfort. And I was sitting with this a few weeks ago. I was walking in my neighborhood, and one of my neighbors, it was around the Super Bowl, and we were talking about, I was like, oh, I don't care about the game, but I'm here for the halftime show. And he heard me say that, and like jetted out of his garage. Goes, I don't understand his music. I don't get it. I don't get it. And then the way, he's using like, oh, the hoes and the bitches, and and then he used the N word. He actually said the N word, and it took my breath away. And his son-in-law was standing there, and I collected myself and said, "You can't say that word." And he said, "Well, but he's saying it." And he said it again. I said, "You can't say that word." And then I stopped him and I said, "Have you stopped to think about that? Maybe he didn't write this song for you. Maybe he wrote that song for us, and we know what his music means, and we know what he stands for. And just like I can't get into heavy metal, I don't need it to be. It wasn't for me, but his music was for me." And it that conversation in and of itself was very, activating for me. But as I've walked away from that conversation, I left thinking about his son-in-law, who was standing there and was just shaking his head the whole time. And I thought to myself, he didn't say anything. I don't know if he said something to his father-in-law. Um, And the story came back into my mind when you said that the enemy of justice is comfort. Because if the son-in-law had said, "Dad, you can't say that. Let's talk about it later," right? And then maybe even had the fortitude to even come and say, "Hey, I'm sorry that this happened," right? Or that this word was spoken in your presence in this way, right? And none of that happened, right? But it left me thinking about comfort and how much people want to be comfortable.
Oh, it's desperate. It's
It's
desperate.
desperate. Exactly. And I see it so clearly after you said the words that it's the enemy of justice, because guess what we need for change to happen? We need to
Discomfort.
be uncomfortable. Right? I mean, even the birth of a child, which is a beautiful thing, comes through the process of the greatest discomfort I think a woman can experience in her body, right? That is the birth of a human being. That's change, adding another human on this planet. And so, what makes us think that we are going to cry about, we want justice, but nobody wants to be uncomfortable?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like everybody wants to go to Thanksgiving dinner, but nobody wants to cook it.
That's right.
Right? Like that's really where we are. That's the part of the story that we're in right now. Everybody wants the benefits of someone else's labor, of someone else's discomfort, but they don't want to process that for themselves, right? And even in the story you just shared, I just want to name something for your listeners. Imagine having a life of such relative ease that you expect everything that happens to cater to you. Every how many halftime shows have I seen that I did not care about at all? Not even a little bit. But imagine what kind of conditions your life has to have for you to actually lose your temper, to be angered by the fact that this did not cater to me. I did not understand it. So if I don't understand it, it must not be good. Like I want you to think about the kind of life you have to have that framing. I don't have that framing. I've never had that framing. There's a statistic that has been tracked for generations that I have always thought is the funniest statistic. It is the like measurement of how many people expect their children's lives to be better than theirs, right? And as somebody who grew up in a low income background, that's not even something on my radar. There's no presumption that I move through the world with that my life will be better than my parents' life. My life will be better than my parents' life if I'm lucky, if I work hard, if I, create advantages for myself, if I leverage my gifts. But a lot of people's lives are not better than their parents' lives, right? And so if you think about that as a metric, the expectation that it's always going to get better for me and mine. Then when somebody comes along and challenges you or presents something that doesn't cater to you, that is literally so disruptive. It's so dysregulating. And so you see all of this resistance and all of this anger and all of this pushback. Literally, if you took one of these situations bit by bit by bit, I think the average person, most people would agree. But in the aggregate, all it feels like is disruption and dismantling and decentering, right? And when you're be in the center story, somebody comes along and says, maybe you're just best supporting actor. And that's a really hard concept. And so thinking about and finding compassion, and this is a little hard, but trying to find compassion for people who are experiencing this kind of change, the pain that he had to feel to come out to you, the nerve to come out to you, this really hit him in the face of like, how can I not be centered? What do you mean I don't have to understand? What do you mean I can't say the same word that he said? What do you mean everything belongs to me? Like, what are you talking about? We might as well be speaking another language.
But
So
that's the construct. That's the
that's it.
construct
That's
that
the
you spoke about.
frame.
That is the frame that he came from. And I also want to name too that discomfort goes to both parties, right? It took a tremendous amount of courage and discomfort for me to name that I did not. I had to tell that I had to even get to the point to tell him not to say that word, right? I was so uncomfortable, right? And for him, it's probably, it's oblivious. I haven't seen him since, and he just gets to move on with his life. Again, part of the construct that they can center themselves, they can say what they say, and they don't need to worry about the impact of their actions, their thoughts, their process, their words, whatever, right? And so then I get to do my work of caring for myself and recognizing that, I don't know, am I as close as I thought I was to this person? Am I, right? I get to decide what my boundary now, how much exposure that I'm going to allow myself to have, right? And I don't even know if this person listens to my podcast or not. So they might be finding
He's
out
about to
about
be
this.
famous. He's about to be famous. And you know what? I want to pull it back a little bit, and I want to say we have the same possibility and the potential for harm with our children. We can be unjust to our children, right? This idea of this is how we've always done it. This is what we do in this family. This is what the order is. This is what the norms are, and somebody comes along and says, well, actually, I think I might want to do this. No, and shove them back into our idea, right? So it's very easy to kind of like, we have a lot of examples around us of injustice on this like macro level, but I think it's really important to think about it as a personal act of, do I prioritize my comfort, my ease, my familiarity above the people around me? And if I can figure out how to decenter myself and to be in true relationship, no matter who they are, whether they're old, whether they're young, whether they're a peer, do I do it in the office? Where that young employee that has an idea, everybody pats them on the head and shoos them away because they're only 27. What do they know, right? We have to be careful, right? Comfort, ease, familiarity, regular. It is addictive, and it is a force that has to be reduced if you consider yourself to be an advocate and a proponent of justice.
Oof.
And Denise, I really appreciate, and you're already offering your gift into this space of like, is that really true? I mean, the malice bit, like, it's actually, as a white-bodied person too, like, what is going on there? If I'm telling the story that it's malice and I'm a good white person, then I'm not touching in on the discomfort that
Mm,
I know I've been that, brother-in-law that froze, that hasn't
mhm,
said things in those instances. But if I look at it through the lens of discomfort and I can feel that discomfort, then I can actually solve the problem, because I'm not going to solve the problem if I'm looking at it through the angle of malice. So
mm,
I like that questioning that you're offering, and especially white folks, as someone that the world, absolutely, including the education system, was designed for me. And how can I keep applying discomfort both to myself and my communities? Like,
mm,
that's a big shift for me. I appreciate that.
yeah.
It's a powerful shift because nobody would open the door for the boogeyman monster who's in a cloak and like nobody would open the door, but they open the door for the trusted family member, the trusted clergy member. That I mean, I hate to go there, but that's who creates the vast majority of harm, right? It's the person you open the door for. So this idea of like the one of the biggest mistakes that we've made is making like the this notion of the bad guy, right? And it's like, be careful. All of us have the potential to be the bad guy. All of us have the potential to make the weaker choice in that situation and to not stand up for what's right and to prioritize our comfort. Everybody has that potential. And this desperation to kind of see yourself as a good guy versus the bad guy versus da 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 da, it's not even a useful frame, because the reality is, there's so many conditions that happen in our country that couldn't happen if we were good guys. If we were good guys, we wouldn't be arguing about school children having lunch and breakfast at school. Like, it wouldn't be acceptable, right? So there's a lot of people who think they're good people, but their apathy is harmful and damaging to our society and how it moves forward. That's about comfort. That's about, I don't want to pay attention to that. I don't want to lean into that. Let somebody else fight the battle. Right. So yeah, there's no bad guy, or we'd love to point out this person that is pushing forth a policy that we think is terrible, but we're not as interested in the other side of that equation. But there's far more of us than there are of them. So if we think that school children should have lunch and breakfast, then why aren't school children having lunch and breakfast? It's because something about us is inadequate in our performance of justice. Justice is an act. It's not an idea. It's not a thought that you have in the back of your head. So it's like, what is the part that I have to play? And so this idea of good guys and bad guys is a frame that really harms this discussion. It doesn't serve us. It's really about comfort and discomfort.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And as I expected, we're going to need to do a part 2 because she's just dropping gems left, right, and center, right? So we are so happy to have you for part 1 of the Rest, Love, and Justice podcast with Denise Hamilton, and we will be back with our part 2. Thanks for joining us today. Peace and love.
Peace and love. And that is our show for this week. This episode was produced by The City Music. As for me, I'm Jackie Gao, and thanks to my co-host, Francina Call.
May you move through this week embodying rest, love, and justice in ways that are meaningful to you and your community. Thanks for joining us today. Peace and love.